So I just turned recording on so that we can send the recording out to anybody that wasn't able to make it today. And I'm so glad that you are all here. We'll just give it a moment for everyone to get in and connected, and then we'll get started. Yes. All right. So welcome everyone. I'm so glad to see you. I just want to look at the participants list. I think I know many of you, and if I do, it's so nice to see you again. And many of you I don't, so it's really nice to meet you. I guess maybe I'll start by sharing a little bit about why I'm here today and a little bit about myself, and then I'd love to learn a little bit about you too. So Kate Alwyn, I'm the co-founder of All About Inclusion, and I am here both as a family member, so I have a number of family members with developmental disabilities, and I'm also a professional in the field. So I've worked as a frontline worker for many years in private homes and in small options. I've worked as a recreation coordinator. I've managed a small options home as well. And now I'm doing something that feels just a little bit more aligned with my values. And yeah, I'm a consultant and co-founder of All About Inclusion. So building community is really, really important to me. And I'd love to know what brought you here today. So if you feel comfortable, I'd love if you shared in the chat what brought you here today. And I would love to know. So maybe you're a support worker, maybe you are a family member, or maybe you're something else entirely. Yes. And while we're doing that, I am just going to share my screen. And if you want to open the chat back up, you can do that by clicking chat up at the top. Yes. So I'll tell you a little bit about All About Inclusion. So we're a small community of professionals who are dedicated to cultivating inclusion for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We do this in a number of ways. So we will be doing things like this. So we try and combine, things that we do to make money and then things that we do to just generally help the field. So we offer training, facilitation, and consultations on things like supported decision-making, building community, visual communication, autism and sensory support, and a whole bunch of other things. We also spend a lot of time doing advocacy work. So outside of our paid work, we're also spending a lot of time on the advocacy side of things. So I'm just going to check the chat again and see if we have anyone sharing with us. So we have someone new to the human services field, wanting to learn all that they can. I love that. And we have someone with Autism Nova Scotia. Welcome. And Prescott, welcome to you too. And we have someone who is a mother of an awesome guy with Down syndrome. Welcome. Yes, and we have someone here from Yakro. Welcome to you as well. Yeah, so I'm going to do my best to watch the chat as we're going. And if you have any questions as we go, I also have someone watching the chat in case I miss it. And we will have a chance at the end to talk a little bit and ask questions. So during our time here today, we have an hour and a half, a little less than that now. We're going to talk about some concrete steps for building community and meaningful relationships. We're going to look at some tools and strategies for people who experience significant social and or communication barriers. We're going to look at a success story that's very close to my heart. And there may even be a few of you here who have met this person in the past. And then we'll have time for some questions and discussion. So I thought we could start with, what is community? So to me, community is a place where you feel a sense of belonging and where you're a part of. And some ingredients of belonging are acceptance. So feeling like you're welcome and wanted as you are, you can be yourself. You don't have to change yourself to fit in. Connection. So feeling like you're a part of something good and a part of something bigger than yourself. And inclusion. So being included in activities, decisions, conversations, feeling like your voice is heard and valued. So, I mean, that's not the whole picture of what community is, but I think that that's a good place to start. So who can be a part of community? So this list is not all in this is not the end all and be all list. There can be so much more to this, but some common ones are family, friends, a partner or spouse, neighbors, co-workers, professionals, supporters, pets and animals. Many people have ancestors or pieces of nature and land as part of their community as well. So you'll notice that this list is a combination of paid and unpaid. So during our time together, we're going to mainly focus on unpaid relationships, but the paid people in our lives are still part of our community. There is an author named Kara Milne who has a really good, kind of a really good litmus test for community. And it's people or groups who notice us when we're there, they know us, and they miss us when we're not there. And I often will use that litmus test when thinking about community. So, using that definition, sometimes a favorite bus driver can be part of our community if you chat with them. They notice you when they're there, they know you, and they miss you if they don't see you for a while. Someone at the grocery store that you talk to every time could be that as well. So before we dive into like the meat and potatoes of this, I thought that we should talk just a little bit about how we can, that this should be a person-directed process. So let's first look at the difference between person-centered and person-directed. So let's imagine there's someone named Jack. And Jack lives in a small options home. And he has an amazing staff team. They love him, they think the world of him, and he thinks the same of them. And they're all in a staff meeting one day, and they're thinking about how they can make Jack's life better. And they think, well, Jack loves going to the movies. We're going to take him to the movies every week. He'll love that. And maybe Jack will love that. He probably will love that. But that's what person-centered would be. The people around Jack are thinking about what he likes, his values, his preferences, and they're making a decision for him based on all of that. So they're centering him in the decision-making process. Person directed would be Jack making the decision. So his staff team would go to him and be like, Jack, how would you like to spend your day? Would you, or what would you like to do every week? And they could give him options like go to the movies, get a job, um, I don't know, go to Truro or something, right? And they would make sure that he understands his choices and then he chooses. And in this situation, I think Jack chose the movies anyway, but the difference is that he had choice, voice, and control over what his day would look like or what his life looks like. So, as we're going through each step of how I would build community, I'm not going to name it every time, but this whole process should be person directed. So the person that you're supporting or the family member should be the one making the decisions and and leading the way in this in whatever way they want to, right? Sometimes person directed mean they're delegating to you to to do half of this stuff, right? That's okay too, but as long as they have choice, voice, and control. Yes. So when I'm working with someone and supporting them to build community, the first thing that I do is I look at the relationships that already exist. So, what relationships currently exist? How can these relationships be maintained, nourished, and enhanced? What works well in these relationships? And what barriers need to be removed? So, a lot of times the existing relationships are family. Sometimes it's family or friends of family. It could be former support workers, friends from school, friends from activities. Unfortunately, my experience in supporting people in small options home is sometimes people have no friends, and other times, I even know people who have no friends and no family, so have no unpaid circles of support. So this process can be especially important that we're going to talk about today for people that don't have friends or family. Um, so we look at the relationships that currently exist, and then I look at how do we nourish and maintain. So oftentimes that looks like maybe connecting more often or connecting in more meaningful ways or making it reciprocal. So making it less of a one-way street. So some ways that I have done this in the past, well, and continue to do, I guess, is one simple way is with gift giving. So for example, a lot of times people with intellectual or developmental disabilities, the people around them pick the gifts that they give instead of them. So one of the ways that I bring meaning into relationships is I find ways for the person to choose their own gifts and ideally make them meaningful. Another way is so in making them more reciprocal, an example of that might be I used to support a young man who had amazing relationships with his family. So he had, a true sense of love and belonging, and he was very close with them. But he wanted to make his relationships more reciprocal. So what we did was we would go shopping once a week and we would cook supper for his family together. And I found out after he had passed away, he's not with us anymore, but I found out after he passed away that those were his family's favorite day of the week because they could come home, they didn't have to worry about cooking supper, and they loved seeing how proud he was to be able to do that for his family. So it was a true way of making it more reciprocal. So that's an example of that. The other thing that I look at is what works well in these relationships already. So sometimes that's things like maybe routine, feelings of safety. It might be the activity that is done together, could be shared interests. It could be the way that they communicate. And we do this for two reasons. So the first is so that, okay, this is already working. We keep doing those things. And second to that, if it's working in this relationship, it might work in another relationship. So we take what works, we keep doing it, and we see if it'll work elsewhere. And the next thing I look at is what barriers need to be removed. And that could be things like, does the person have a way to communicate that they want to see or contact the person? And can contact be made independently, or does it require a support person? And one of the things that I've done in the past is, you know, a lot of people don't know how to use the telephone, for example, like how to dial a phone number. So you can actually get cordless phones and probably wired phones too, probably even phone apps. I just haven't looked on a cell phone, but you can actually get specifically cordless phones that have 2 or 3 places to put a picture in them, and a person, and that speed dials the person. So you can just they could have their own phone and they just press the person's picture to be able to call them. So some other barriers that I've seen are obviously communication. Communication is hard. Um, Another one is, so sometimes a support team isn't supportive of the relationship, so that can be a barrier. Logistics, particularly in small options and larger facilities as well, just because I think we all know that staffing can be such a challenge, right? And another barrier could be behaviors that challenge. So I look at the barriers that exist and then try to find a way to try to find a way to remove the barriers or lessen them. And I also look at those barriers and try to avoid them in other relationships if possible. So the next thing, oh, we skipped one. The next thing that I do is I identify values, interests, goals, and preferences. So, what is important to the person? What are the person's goals? How does or would the person like to spend their days? What are their interests? What would the person like to experience in their life? So, when I look at what's important to a person, this could be big things like family, spirituality, nature, connection, and it could be small things. So small things might be coffee, a particular TV show, knitting, painting, and like pretty much all of us, it would be a combination of big things and small things. And I will share this later. I do have a visual support to help a person communicate what's important to them when they don't speak using words. So I don't want us to think that this process is only for people that speak using words or don't have a lot of barriers. So I can say that I have gone through this whole process with people that have that experience a lot of barriers in their life, including people who don't talk using words and have significant social barriers. So I will share some of those visual strategies after. So I also look at, what are the person's goals? I think we know most of the common ones, which would be a romantic relationship is really common, a job, friends, vacations, and smaller things could be anything. It could be beating a video game. It could be going swimming. I worked with someone who wanted to learn how to make their own peanut butter toast, and that was a goal. Um, so we look at the goals and then look at how would the person like to spend their days. And I recognize that sometimes it's really hard for a person to make an informed decision on this when they haven't experienced all of the options, right? So we should name that as something. So it's helpful to for some people to start by listing, okay, this is what I know I don't want my day to look like. I don't like these things. And then list, okay, well, these are things that I do like. And then list, well, these are things I might like or I would like to try. I think it's safe to say that the one thing that people do want is to have choice, voice, and control over what their days look like. Yes. So the next thing I do is I look at their interests, and these could be very specific and somewhat random things. Like I used to work with someone that just absolutely loved phones and elderly people. And we did manage to find something that fit perfectly in that. And the last thing for this is look at what would the person like to experience. And I think of this a little bit like it could be dreams. Like, what are your dreams? And I find it helpful for many people, to look at magazines and pictures online. A lot of times, a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So the next thing I do, so we've identified, what the person likes and what the person wants and what their goals are. So now I take those and I look at what options exist in the community. So based on their values, goals, and preferences, what options can I find? I make sure that I'm thinking big and small. And I also look at what options are already in use. So I cast my net really, really wide for this. Some of the places I look are Facebook and Instagram. I'm I'm a little bit behind the times, so I'm not on TikTok, but I bet some people could find things on there too. Here in Halifax, I look on The Coast, which is a local newspaper with events listings for anyone not local. I look on community or Kijiji community events. I look at festival listings. I look at the Downtown Halifax events page, look at the library calendar, the Club Inclusion calendar. Shout out to anybody here from Club Inclusion. I look at museum events. I look at recreation facility classes and workshops. I've even used the community health team programming before too, that's free. And there's so many other places. So if anyone can think of anything I haven't listed, please put it in the chat for the rest of us. So some other things I look at is, so those are places to find community events. I also look at other ways of connecting with people. So some of these aren't appropriate for everyone. And sometimes organizational policy doesn't allow. But in the work I've done, I've worked for places that are okay with having connection with support workers, family, and friends, if everyone wants that. So my husband, for example, has been friends with a number of people I support and still is. People's neighbors, that's a really big one and can also help keep people safe as well. So does the person have any connection with their neighbor? Do they want to? That can be a really great thing to start with. Other things might be, I might hear about things through word of mouth. Oftentimes maybe looking for volunteer work or paid work. And then also regular activities like the mall, the ferry. We've met people doing just regular things like that. So when doing any of those things, we think big and small. So big might be even planning a vacation. Small might be saying hello to a neighbor. But I do want to name that saying hello to a neighbor could be a really big thing for someone as well. So it's all about perspective, right? And finally, when I'm looking at community options, I'm also looking at what options are already in use. So what does the person already do? And how can we bring more connection into that? So that's something we will talk about in a couple minutes. But at this point, think about making a shift in mindset from completing an activity to focusing on connection when doing it. And just that slight shift when doing something that you already do can make a big difference. Okay, so we know what the person likes and we know what options exist. So now we have to get out there and try the things. And I know that this is easier said than done, but it is entirely doable. And I will name that I have a resource for doing this that I will share with you. And I do have a short online mini course as well, if that's helpful. It's $20, but if cost is a barrier always in any of our online courses, you just have to email me. So families, you know, if cost is a concern, just email me. Yes, so we tried the things. Different locations and different times can make a really big difference. And unless it's just a huge bomb, I usually suggest trying it more than once. The second time can make a big difference because the first time trying a new thing can be kind of nerve-wracking for someone, both a supporter and the person trying it out. So the second time is often a lot different than the first time. The other thing is before trying it, try and determine the best time and location to go. I usually call places ahead of time and ask what might be the quietest time. I also I ask them all the questions. I'll ask them about parking. I will ask them about what's the least busy time. I'll find out what the whole process is from start to finish. Just anything I can do to take away uncertainty, right? The other thing is that if you find somewhere that has really warm and welcoming employees, that makes all the difference in the world. So I'll give a shout out to the last time I experienced this. I invited a friend of mine who does experience a lot of social barriers and communication barriers. I invited him out for breakfast with me to the Osney Cafe, and they were so warm and welcoming. They talked to him instead of me. When they couldn't understand, they would ask him to try again rather than just turning to me. They all chatted with him when another patron, he said hi to another patron and they didn't hear. They pointed out to the person, hey, that person over there is saying hi to you, right? Like they just made a super welcoming and inclusive environment, and that made all the difference. So just when you experience that, recognize it, and that might be a really good place to become a regular, right? And then after trying something for the first time, or even the second or third time, as I'm going, I'm noticing what's working well and what isn't working well, and I'm adjusting for next time. So a lot of times in my experience, and this could be because I work with a lot of people with autism, but sensory is something that ends up being a challenge. So what we do is we plan accordingly for next time. We find a quieter time, or we bring a sensory support with us next time. So we just adjust as we go. And I just want to name again, I know that this step is one of the most important, but it is also one of the hardest. So if you find yourself struggling with this, you're not alone, for sure. So the next thing is focus on connection. So when you're out there trying the things, again, we're shifting the mindset from completing the activity to the focus being on connecting with people. So, encourage the person to say hello and talk to people. And, in keeping with a person directed process, you can ask ahead of time, hey, do you want some help with that? Do you want me to help introduce or help you talk to people? And you can be a facilitator of beginning conversations, right? And also with this, we're considering what makes it easier to connect with people. So again, a quiet time is often a lot easier to connect with people. So if you're trying to, for example, become a regular at a cafe and get to know people there, um, going during the lunch rush is probably not the best time to connect with people, right? So maybe making it 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The other thing is if other than for sensory reasons, let's say, but if someone can go without wearing like earbuds or headphones for music, that makes it easier to connect because, socially wearing headphones and earbuds is a cue that you're not really open for connection, right? Um, but again, sometimes that's necessary for sensory reasons. So the other thing is that it's often supportive to practice ahead of time, especially when people experience a lot of social barriers and lack um, social judgment skills. So something I do for that is, and I will share some of these with you as well. So I'm talking about it now, but I'll show you some examples a little later. And I will share some of them with you afterwards as well. I'll send them out by email. So visual stories, explaining how to interact in different situations. I think a lot of people have heard of social stories. The other thing I do is role playing and practicing. So, for example, I know someone that we would practice how to order a coffee. I would pretend that I'm the cashier and we would role play and practice how to order the coffee. And I would often even make a visual story to help with that as well. So, first I do this, next I do that. And then the other thing I do is I model it. So sometimes someone might be more comfortable if I ordered my coffee first and I'm modeling the process and then they do it themselves. So, in looking at how to put this into practice, something I often would do is we would practice at home. Then, just before going into the cafe, we would just practice quickly again. Then I might order my coffee first to model and as a reminder, and then they might order their coffee. And then as we go, less and less of that support is needed. The other thing I do is I mention any like potential hitches that could come up. So sometimes people might not recognize that they're supposed to wait in line and then they just walk right up to the till, and then that's not a very good way to build community because now everyone's upset because this person just cut in front of them in line. So I'll actually say, we're going to go into the cafe now. First, we're going to wait in line and then we'll order our coffee, just as a social cue reminder. Now, obviously, that's not necessary for everyone, but I just want to name that a lot of people that have a lot of social barriers need to be explicitly told and taught these social cues. So the other things that I do are I help the person remember things about the people that they talk to. So if there's another patron there that they say hi to every time and they mention they're going on vacation, I'll take note of that in my head. And then the next time we go, I'll say, hey, didn't so and so say that they were going on vacation? We should ask them how their vacation was, right? And that helps the other person feel noticed, known, and missed, right? I help them remember birthdays and significant events. We'll get a rolling calendar, and anytime there's a birthday or significant event to remember, it's on the calendar. And even something like if a person experiences a loss, we might write that in too, just so that we can, let them know that somebody else remembers that too, the following year, for example. And that can be a really powerful way of building community because people really they can feel the compassion in that and the connection in that. Another thing I do is I've supported people to make photo journals. And what we would do is every week we would go and get all the pictures printed and we would put them in a photo journal. And I would write little details in the photo journal to help remember things about the person. So let's say using the cafe, for example, um, if the person sometimes gets a coffee for someone else, I might write in a little like speech bubble like we see on the screen there. Um, wow, I love double coffee. And that would help the person remember what they like. That also helps any other support worker that might be helping the person know that. So it helps in training others. And these photo journals also help the person show their loved ones or their friends what they do and what they love, right? Um, and they're a fabulous keepsake. I did work for an amazing family who has a number of photo journals we made over a number of years. And the person that I worked with has since passed away and is no longer with us. And the family still gets to have those photo journals to look through and see all the fun things that they did, right? So they're helpful in a number of ways. So the next thing I do is I be an organizer, or I help the person to be an organizer. I would, when I see that people have a common interest, for example, I might say to the person I support, hey, that person has, likes this too. Would you like to invite them out to do that? And some of the things that we've done that with are cooking classes, library, music, um, going out to eat. I mean, who doesn't like to go out to eat? Karaoke at the Games Cafe and the mall, and a number of other things. And in order to do that, well, you can do that in person, and we have done it in person. But it is also good to get people's phone numbers and to ask if if the two of them would like to connect on social media. And I want to note that community can be on social media too, and that can be really, really that can be really meaningful to a lot of people. So I just want to name that. And I also would not just, invite people out for, shared interests. We would also organize get-togethers. So some of the things that we've done are like kitchen music jams, karaoke, backyard fire, games night, movie night, and just a little tip. If you have a projector, or if you know someone that has a projector, something that we've had a lot of fun doing is you can actually do a backyard movie and like shine it onto the building or the house, and that can make for a really fun and popular night. And it's virtually no cost as well. Something else that we would do as far as organizing is we would host parties. And I know that that's not something that is accessible to, or I don't want to say accessible, but not everyone is going to want to host a party. But if you do want to, it can make you really popular. And it can be done really inexpensively. So some of the ways that I've done this, because doing it at home isn't always the best option. So I have rented church community rooms. I've rented the grocery store community room. I've rented the library community room. And we've also done them outdoors. I think we did one at the community oven maybe once. And I want to name that this doesn't have to cost a lot of money. So I've done all of these for maybe under $40 inclusive. So one time, like I knew an older Zumba instructor. So we rented a community room at the library for like $25 at the time. And we had a little Zumba party and just had a few bags of chips and a couple bottles of pop, and it was a fabulous time. Yes. So the next thing that I do is I build routines. The goal here is to become a regular, which allows a person to become noticed, known, and missed, to quote Kara Milne. So that involves, excuse me, involves going places the same time, same day-ish, and it allows you to see other people that are usually there at the same day, same time, and to get to know the staff that are usually working at that time. And it's really important that when you notice, so let's say if you're a support worker It's really important that you notice when a person becomes noticed, known, and missed, or becomes a regular somewhere, because you want to make sure that that's not something that's lost, right? Assuming the person enjoys it. You want to make sure that that's communicated to other members of the team and that it's not something that is lost if you were no longer there, because you might go on vacation, you might find another job. You want to make sure that these aspects of community are not solely reliant upon you. So make sure that you take note and that you make sure that the rest of the team knows this as well. And of course, I'm speaking from the perspective of someone that mainly has supported people that have significant barriers. Many people are able to tell people on their own, like, I want to go here today. I usually go here and I see this person, and that's my routine, and I love it, right? It's just my experience has mostly been with people that are not able to speak that using words. So the next thing is for support workers or family members. It's important that we know our role. Ideally, we are the bridge, we are not the destination, right? So the more we can fade into the background, the better. And I do want to name that as a support worker, or even as a person, it can feel uncomfortable to not be part of a conversation or to be in the background. It really can feel uncomfortable. But I also want to name that if we do get to a point where we're able to do that in someone's relationship, that's us doing our job, right? We don't want them to have to rely on us. Now, as much as a person needs, we're there, right? But if we can fade into the background and not be needed and not be one of the main kind of parts of the show, that is the goal, right? Now, there are times where people need support communicating. So, for example, I supported someone that could make maybe 15 to 20 words with their mouth, but you really had to know him and know the way that he communicates to understand. So I would have to listen and then relay the message. And I just want to name that it's really important in this. So if we have to do this, it's really, really important, to quote Dave Hinsberger, to be the microphone and not their voice, right? So we are repeating what they're saying, right? We are sharing what they're saying and not putting our own thoughts, opinions, whatever on it, right? So we are their microphone, not their voice. And just another little tip is I work with someone, or used to work with someone, they're my friend now, that talks using words, but it's it can be very hard to understand his words. And what I would do is, and this can be a hard one to gauge, like the exact right amount of time, but if he would talk to someone, I would pause just a little bit and see if they are understanding what he's saying before I would be the microphone, right? And there were times where I would be so surprised, like I might have trouble understanding something that he said, and this random cashier at the supermarket got it like that, right? So taking that pause before jumping into the interaction, if that makes sense. And always, 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 we are taking the cues and direction from the person we support, and we're checking in, right? Like we're asking, what support do you want from us? You know, do you have a cue to give me if you need a little extra support? Um, it could even be after an interaction, we're asking, you know, is there something you wanted me to do differently? And if someone feels challenged, like that might be too challenging to answer, we're always also paying attention to body language, facial expressions, because they can say a lot in an interaction. Like someone might be like leaning away from you, and that might be like, okay, back up, support worker, I got this, right? So in all of this, we're trying to fade into the background as much as the person wants, and we are being the bridge, not the destination. And, you know, someone shared with me a family member actually, you know, it's our family members have often, and the people that we support, have watched people come in and out of their lives, right? And I've watched what happens when support workers are the stars of the show, right? They are the community. Well, they leave, right? It's almost inevitable, right? I mean, there are exceptions to that, of course, but it's almost inevitable that the support workers leave and then they're left without that community, right? So that's where we really do want to be the bridge and not the destination. Okay. So those are my steps to building community, and I'm going to send out a resource that lays them out with those sort of questions as well, so that you have it and you can use it to think through each situation if that's helpful. Now I just want to take a little bit of time and talk about so, some ways to support people that maybe don't communicate in traditional ways or who experience a lot of social barriers. And I'll show you a couple of the strategies and tools that I use. And again, I will share the examples with you as well. So I really do want to emphasize these steps that I've shared. They can absolutely, and I have watched it and I have experienced it, they absolutely do work for people that experience a lot of barriers. So anybody can have community. So if we're supporting someone that maybe communicates in maybe less traditional ways, so maybe they don't speak using words, for example, we would look at, how does the person communicate, right? And how can this be shared with people that they don't know well? So to give an example, I know somebody that like does speak using words, but not a lot. He mainly communicates visually, so using like visuals and things like that. And one of the ways that he connects with people is touching hands. So that is a really, COVID times aside, that is a really great way to connect with someone, right? So sometimes if this person was wanting to meet someone or initiate contact, I would model that and I would help bridge that, right? I would say, "Oh, you want to touch hands." So that's a verbal cue for the person that they're trying to initiate that interaction with. So I might do that to help facilitate that, and I'll demonstrate with my hands, and I'll cue it with my voice. So, oh, you want to touch hands to say hello, and then they both know what's happening, right? So that's a small way, but that can be really meaningful, right? I also look at how to include in conversations, and that is one way, right? And another thing to look at is, like, first off, we never, ever, ever talk about. We always talk to, right? And I will admit that when I first got into the field over a decade ago, I worked somewhere, my first job in the field, talking about happened all the time. It wasn't until that I got to a more, we'll say, values-based environment that I learned not to do that and how to. So, some of the ways are you can have visual supports. You can use hands, like we talked about. You can talk to the person and the other person at the same time, like, "Hey, Jack, you love the movies, don't you?" Right? And then the other person might be at the movies, and maybe you both like the same movies. "What do you think, Jack?" Right? And then I look at, what does connection look like? Because that's very different for every person. So we talked about someone, connection looks like touching hands, maybe touching arm. Sometimes it's just sharing space together, right? So sometimes sitting together and watching a movie or just sitting together, that is connection to some people, right? So I'm trying not to put my definition of connection onto that person. Other things might be hugs, playing or listening to music together. Other people, it's repeating sounds back. So I know some people that either don't talk using words but say a lot of sounds, or do talk using words but it's echolalia and they want it repeated back as well. So connection might look like hearing them say something and then repeating it back, right? So if that's out in if that person's trying to connect with someone else, they might say something, words or not words, and I might say, "Oh, you want me to say that back?" And then I say it back. And then the person we're with understands as well because I've named it, I've said it, and I've done it, and now they know. Um, so yeah, in that way, we are looking at what connection looks like for that person, and then we're helping to facilitate it, right? We're being the bridge. So there are many people that I know and love who experience a lot of social barriers. And what we can do as supporters is we can help to be the social bridge. And some of these things we talked about earlier. So we can be the social bridge by practicing role playing, modeling. We can use visual stories. We can layer support. So layering support might be bringing, so an example of layering support might be, I know somebody that experiences a lot of social barriers but wants to be able to have coffee by himself. So what I'll do is we prepare ahead of time using these strategies. And then when going to the cafe, I sit somewhere else close by in case he wants me. But so I'm that layer of support, but I'm not with him. So layering support is just putting things in place in case they're needed. We reduce uncertainty and we make things concrete. So again, that was where we explain the process step by step so that there's less uncertainty. Less uncertainty means less anxiety, right? Sometimes we also use prompts, right? So prompt might be, first we wait in line, like, okay, now we're gonna wait in line. And then we get to the cashier and we're like, okay, now we pay. Or it might be, a prompt could also be that, hey, that person just got back from vacation. We should ask them how their vacation was, right? And then we also could use if then. So if this person does that, we do this. If that happens, we do this. And I just want to quickly show you an example of what that might look like. So I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, might not need to stop sharing my screen. Just 1 second. Just bear with me. All right. So here's an example of a visual if then. So this is one that I've worked on someone with because not everyone wants to be hugged, not everyone wants to be touched. And we'd use this to say, if this, then this. If I want to hug, I ask, can I give you a hug? Then I listen for their answer. If they say yes, then I can give a hug. And the listening for the answer is really important because I started with saying, you know, if you want to hug someone, you have to ask, right? But I did not mention, right? So that's really common. If you want to hug someone, you have to ask them first. So this person would ask and then hug, right? Because it was saying the thing and then doing it. So we had to explicitly state that ask, listen, if they say yes, you can hug. And we also worked on if they say no, no hug, right? I also have another if then. So this is one we worked on. If someone says hello, then I say hello back and I ask, how are you? And wait for them to answer. So just making things that are somewhat abstract more concrete, taking the uncertainty out and like explicitly naming the social expectations. Here's another one. First then. So first wait in line, then order food. It's like I said, if you cut in front of everyone in line, that is not a great way to make friends. And I will share a visual story about friendship as well. So this one is specifically for someone I know. What a friend is different for pretty much everyone, right? So a friend might be watching NASCAR together. Another person, it might be their definition of a friend might be someone that just sits with me and we just share space together. So this was based on our friendship, me and this person. So because they had never had unpaid support that, or an unpaid friend that wasn't family, we had to define what that relationship is and what it looks like. So a friend is someone I like to spend time with that does not work for me, someone I can talk to about things that matter to me, someone who likes to do fun things with me, like go for coffee or listen to music, someone who cares about me and thinks I'm a good person. And then this is what it looks like being a friend. So, being a good friend, I can say hello to my friend and ask, "How are you today?" I can pay attention when my friend talks to me. I can tell my friend about things that matter to me. And I can ask my friend if they would like to go do something fun together. Yes, and I will share this with all of you as well. Oh, and finally, I also want to share with you, I mentioned that I would share how a person might communicate what's important to them when they don't use words. So this is one way that we've used. You can see this is a bit like a choice board. You would put the person's picture beside what's important to me, and then they would choose out the things that matter to them, right? And you would customize this to that person, and you would possibly have more pages, right? Give as much option as they would like, and they can choose the things that matter to them and be able to communicate that. So that is one way that we've done it in the past, and I will share this with you as well. All right, just 1 second. I'm gonna bring our presentation back up. Okay, this is Noah. I want to share a little bit about what this can look like in action. And this is someone, he's no longer with us. He passed away in 2019, but I'm sharing this story with um, permission and absolute joy from his family, and also knowing that he would be totally okay with it and would probably want to be here to help tell the story himself. So when I met him, he had an amazing relationship with his family and, a true sense of love and belonging, but he did not have any unpaid, non family community. And he didn't really have any recreation either, throughout his days, we'll say. And, Noah did have significant barriers in a lot of ways. He was a spastic quadriplegic. He had very little control over his most of his body. And he had maybe 15 or 20 words that he was able to make with his mouth. So he did have a lot of barriers, but he was an absolute joy to the people around him. Like his smile, his laugh, he could brighten up a room in an instant. So the first thing we did is look at the relationships that he already had, so his family, and we looked at ways that we could enhance those relationships. And what we did is we started cooking supper, right? That was the person whose his family's favorite day of the week was when he would make supper and they could come home from work and not have to worry about it. We started having him make presents on holidays. We did the photo journal, and that allowed him to communicate with his family what he was doing, right? Because he couldn't use words to do that. His mouth couldn't make the words, even though his mind knew them. We would remember birthdays and significant events and get people cards. We would sometimes bring his dad coffee to work, and Noah would help do chores around the house. So he could lift his arm up a little bit. So I would have him help fold laundry that way. It was a creative thing. It took some finagling, but he was definitely able to do it. And he was really proud of his ability to do that. Next, we looked at what he loved. Noah loved connecting with people. He loved elderly folk. He loved music. He loved bones, and he loved his family. So we figured out how to nourish his relationships with family. But those are some interesting kind of interests to figure out. So I looked at people I knew. You know, he would talk to my husband on the phone. He got a volunteer job at the Dartmouth Senior Service Center. A shout out to them. They were amazing for him. And he helped me answer the phone, and he greeted every person that came in. He would lift his arm like this to greet the people that came in, and he would have a huge smile when they would walk in, and he would help me hold the phone. He would lift his arm up and I would bring my head down. He would help me hold the phone, and he loved it. Loved it. And they loved him. Like, it was a true reciprocal volunteer relationship. The people just, when he was in there, they would get so happy. He had like 6 girlfriends, and he just brightened up their life. He brightened up their life. And it was also in line with his interests, right? And when he was at the end of his life, they actually had a Christmas party early so that he could have a Christmas party with them before he passed away. And it was really beautiful and meaningful, right? We also did dance and exercise classes. We did club inclusion. Shout out to club inclusion again. We would like we did so many things like that and we would take the bus, for example, and he would get cards for his bus drivers that were really nice. And it took me about 3 years to stop being around the city and them asking about him everywhere. Bus drivers, the lady at the supermarket, right? He just did so many things and connected with so many people that he was noticed, known, and missed all over the city, right? He became a regular at a number of places, and they would notice, know, and miss him. We used to host get-togethers. Like, we would connect with, there was people in Small Options he knew. We would invite them out. Other people that he met at club, we would invite them out. Things like karaoke, going out to eat, going to the library, and we would also host parties. So birthday parties, Christmas parties, random Zumba parties. And yeah, so just by doing, and he got all of that from doing the steps that we talked about today. Like, those steps exactly are what allowed him to, over the course of 2 to 3 years, build an entire community around him that of friends, acquaintances, co-workers, like volunteer style. Even, like I said, it took me 3 years for the bus drivers to stop, and the people all over the city to stop asking about them, because I think by that time I had managed to let them all know. Yes, so that's a success story. So we've talked about identifying existing relationships, identifying values, interests, goals, and preferences, identify community options, get out there and do the things, focus on connection, be an organizer, build routines, and know your role. And I will, like I said, I'll give you a resource to that will outline this as well. Yes, so here's some invitations. We're all about inclusion, and We love collaborations. So if you're watching this and you're like, wow, I would really like to work with them somehow and collaborate on something, we love that. We love community. My email address is there. Get in touch with us. The other person involved in this currently is the fabulous Dr. Paula Hutchinson. And we love to collaborate. So, tools and resources. We have a few on our website, but I'm going to send out a number of them to you. We also make tailored tools, resources, and strategies for people. That would be more on the paid side, but on the free side, I'm going to send out a number of them to you and hope that they're useful. We also offer online and in-person training and coaching. In-person is always paid. Online, there is a cost, but as I said, if that is a barrier for you, especially if you are a family member, all you have to do is email. Typically speaking, we expect service providers to pay because they are funded, but if you are a family member, we want this to be as low barrier as you need it to be. And we also offer organization-specific training and planning and implementation services. So that can look like things like, you want to do building community, but you have no idea how to. Well, I'm hoping that what we gave you today will support you in that process. But if you're like, I really can't, I don't have what I need, or I don't have the time, that's something we can support you with, as well as like planning meaningful recreation and all of that. So yes, there's some invitations. Our next session is going to be April 2nd from 1 to 2:30. And it'll be online on Zoom like this. We're doing it on supported decision making, which is going to be really important as the human rights remedy is implemented. This is how we give people choice, voice, and control, right? So if that interests you, we would love to see you. I will send it out on our newsletter. If you want to get on our newsletter, just send us an email. You should all have an email from me earlier today. You can respond to that. And now I want to open it up for questions or comments or anything that you want to talk about. So we have about 12 minutes left. If you have any questions that you want to discuss, this is a good time for it. You can put your question in the chat, or you're welcome to take yourself off mute and go for it. So I'll give it an awkward pause to see if anyone has any questions or anything that you want to talk about before we're done. And I see you saying thank you in the chat. I am so happy that you were here and that it was useful. Yes. I'm going to give it a little more of an awkward pause in case someone is writing. So Amy is wondering, will you be offering your visuals course on Zoom? So Amy, that's a really good question. We have it available online, and I'll send out a link to all of our online courses when I send all the resources. We do offer it in person to organizations, and we can offer it via Zoom as well. Yes, so we probably won't be doing a free webinar on it, but we do offer it to an organization that wants to hire us to come in to do it. And how much is the in-person? So it depends. For a full day, we usually charge 200 a person, but it can really depend on what you need. So if you have like 20 or 30 people, we're not going to charge 200 a person. So if that's something that you want to talk about, you have my email address. I sent out an email to everyone earlier. I'm happy to talk to you about it and see what we can do for you and how we can make it accessible. And otherwise, the online course self-paced is there. Okay, I'll look forward to hearing from you, Amy. Um, yes. Does anyone else have any questions? I'll just give a little bit more awkward silence, just in case. And I'm going to stop the recording as well.